Hello, welcome back to my channel, Books with AR. There were a total of 7 tokens. Wang Lin got 2 from Li Shan, 1 from the Piao Miao sect, 1 from the Huang sect, and 1 from the Huan Da sect. In total, he had 5. Ignoring the one that belonged to the corpse sect, there was still one more remaining. Wang Lin pondered for a while. He had already found all of the sects in the Jue Ming Valley, but he still hadn't found the last token. Of course, that didn't rule out the fact that someone could have hidden one somewhere. He wasn't going to bother searching for it. After all, he already had 5 of the 7 tokens, which was enough to secure his spot in the foreign battleground. After he stopped wondering about the token, he started thinking about the battle in 2 months. First were his Xian grains of rice. He had already recovered the one he used earlier and now had 3 in total, once again. One was a single grain, while the other 2 were supercharged grains from fusing 2 normal ones. After carefully putting away the 3 grains, Wang Lin pondered a bit and started looking through his bags. He had killed quite a few people recently, so he still had a lot to go through. After searching for a long time, Wang Lin took out a round bead. This bead was only 1/10 the size of a fist. It was very smooth, without any designs on it, and there were some cracks on the side. After picking up the bead, he couldn't help but think of the strange man named Adai. This was the first gift Adai had given him. He looked at the bead as his eyes lit up. After a long time, his mouth curved upwards as he let out a cold smile. He put the bead back into his bag of holding, took a deep breath, and spat out a green light. The green flying sword floated before him, motionless. Wang Lin felt like ever since his spiritual energy changed, there was something constantly obstructing his control of the flying sword. It was not as easy as before. Although the flying sword's power had increased greatly, a flying sword he couldn't fully control was not something he would allow. Therefore, Wang Lin decided to use this time to refine the flying sword again. Both of his hands formed a seal as he sent spiritual energy to surround the flying sword. Then Wang Lin slapped his bag of holding and took out a gourd. This flying sword was his blood-refined weapon, so he was willing to expend a lot of resources on it. He clenched his teeth and poured out 1/3 of the liquid that was stored inside. Under Wang Lin's control, the spirit liquid filled with yin energy floated in the air and condensed to one droplet of water. The water droplet released waves of yin energy that covered the cave in frost. Wang Lin pointed at the water droplet, and the droplet immediately moved toward the flying sword. The droplet landed on the tip of the sword and rolled down the sword's blade all the way down to the end of the hilt. Soon, the flying sword became crystal clear. Wang Lin took a deep breath. He bit his tongue and spat out blood. As he spat out the blood, he waved his hand and the blood turned to mist, which then covered the flying sword that was covered in spirit liquid. The blood mist slowly entered the liquid. Soon, the spirit liquid that covered the flying sword was light red and even turning purple. Wang Lin took a few breaths. He spat out more blood as his hand created symbols. After each symbol was made, he would throw it at the flying sword. Gradually, more and more symbols appeared, and after a short while, all of the blood was used up. Wang Lin looked at the flying sword, and without a word, he hit his chest as the spiritual energy in his body surged. He pushed his chest inwards and spat out a bit of his essence blood. Wang Lin's face became pale, but he didn't hesitate as he drew a symbol with that blood. As more and more symbols appeared, along with the help of the essence blood, the spirit liquid around the flying sword was already dark red and even turning purple. After the last drop of blood gathered on the flying sword, Wang Lin concentrated and shouted, "Condense!" With a hum, the flying sword shook violently and started to tremble faster and faster. Wang Lin didn't panic as he looked at the flying sword. His hand was constantly forming seals. Shortly after, the spiritual energy surrounding the flying sword started to boil and release white smoke as if it were being baked. As more and more smoke appeared, the amount of liquid decreased. Eventually, all of the liquid disappeared. Looking at the flying sword, although it was still green, there were red veins on its surface, and it was only half of its original size. What Wang Lin surprised them most was that the sword's hilt was almost completely gone. Before, the sword's hilt to blade ratio was 1:5, but now the ratio was 1:15. One could basically ignore the hilt at this point. What Wang Lin didn't know was that this flying sword that had been blood refined by Wang Lin was slowly evolving. Once this evolution reaches the final phase, the flying sword will gain the G-Rium property and will become very powerful. Wang Lin tested the flying sword and found that it moved several times faster than before. When he used his full power, it was so fast that he couldn't keep track of it with his eyes anymore. Adding on to the flying sword's teleportation ability, this flying sword was a very terrifying existence. At the very least, if a core formation cultivator without a defensive treasure active were to be hit by the sword, whether or not they'd come alive would be uncertain. This is the power of the G-Rium on magic treasures. It allows the magic treasure to break past its boundaries and reach an extreme. But going against a Nansent supervisor, it was still not enough. After all, Wang Lin was only at the foundation establishment stage. Even with the G-Rium, he was simply too weak. The G-Rium will only display its true power when Wang Lin breaks into the Nansent stage. That is when the terror of the G-Rium commences. The current small green sword was even more delicate. Slivers of blue ice appeared and disappeared from the flying sword. It all looked very strange. Wang Lin swallowed the flying sword again. His eyes lit up, and he calculated the time and found that he had spent 1 month refining the sword. Wang Lin decided to spend the remaining month cultivating inside the Heaven Revolting bead. He was confident that he could break through to the mid-stage of foundation establishment by the end of the month. Hello, welcome back to my channel, Books with AR. Once he reaches the mid-stage of foundation establishment, he will be able to use several powerful techniques, like one from the corpse sect that will allow him to summon ghosts to fight for him. In order to get the soul flag from Teng Huayuan during their fight, Wang Lin was racking his brain for ideas. After making a decision, he took out a gourd with spirit liquid, touched the bead, then entered the heaven-defying bead's space. Wang Lin hadn't cultivated inside the bead in a long time. Looking at the boundless space, there was a mass of gray gas above him. He felt a powerful pressure coming from the gas. The area was surrounded by thin and long lights that were very dim. When Wang Lin first entered the bead, these bodies of light didn't move, but after the water element was complete, the bodies of light began to move randomly. Wang Lin stood inside the space and tried to touch a body of light, but his hand went directly through it. It seemed that Wang Lin and these bodies of light were on different planes, so no matter how hard he tried to touch them, he never could. Although he couldn't touch them, he could easily control them with his mind. With just a thought, the light would start to move, form a pattern, scatter, or condense. As long as Wang Lin thought it, the light would react. Wang Lin had asked C2 Nan about the lights, but even C2 Nan wasn't sure what was going on. According to C2 Nan, this heaven-defying bead was very strange. This space was only one of its functions. Aside from time manipulation, C2 Nan hadn't figured out anything else about the bead. C2 Nan only knew that with his identity as the strongest cultivator of a rank 6 country, no one in his cultivation planet dared to mess with him before he had obtained the bead. But after the bead came into his possession, some extremely powerful cultivators appeared and tried to kill C2 Nan. They forced him to give up his body and to hide inside the heaven-defying bead, only to barely escape with his life. C2 Nan had told Wang Lin before that based on his analysis, the people who were chasing him were definitely not from his planet. C2 Nan was very sure because by the time he reached his current cultivation level, he knew all of the experts on his planet, and for someone that was called the #1 cultivator in his planet, his cultivation level was very high. Most of the people that attacked him had the same cultivation level as him, and he was sure that only one of those people had surpassed him. If it wasn't for the fact that that person acted, C2 Nan wouldn't have given up his body. It has to be said that C2 Nan had many friends. If it was only people of the same cultivation level as him, he wouldn't have to get people to come and help because they would die one by one, because C2 Nan knew that that person's cultivation level was not the same as his. C2 Nan's heart formed an answer. That person must have came from a rank 7 cultivation country. Thinking about this answer, the heaven-defying bead became even more mysterious. something that even a rank 7 cultivation country would fight for, must be a very precious treasure. Situnan told Wang Lin all of this and warned him time and time again to be careful. If anyone were to find out about this bead, then both of them will die for sure. Situnan calculated that if that person really was from a rank 7 cultivation country, then it would be easy for them to send a search order to a rank 6 country. Thus, they had to be very careful. Wang Lin thought about all of this deeply in his heart. But ignoring the fact that this heaven-defying bead might have any other functions, just the time manipulation was already heaven-defying enough. To cultivators, cultivation is life. Every time one reaches a new level of cultivation, their lifespan increases. In addition to that, let's not forget about the feeling of being above everyone once you're at the top. It has to be said that in the cultivation world, cultivating is very important. What are mortals and key concentration cultivators to a foundation establishment cultivator? Although saying that they aren't even on the same level as dogs and pigs is a bit ugly, but that is what the cultivation world is like. Similarly, in the eyes of nascent soul cultivators, core formation and foundation establishment cultivators are viewed as the same as mortals and key concentration cultivators. And if someone is at the soul transformation stage, then anyone at the spirit severing stage and below are people they can kill as they wish. Wang Lin's eyes revealed a determined look. He had already experienced the harshness of the cultivation world. The cultivation world is much crueler than the mortal world, and he must become stronger if he wishes to survive. He must become strong enough that everyone fears him. Only then will he not be bullied by others. If my cultivation level was spirit severing or soul transforming, not to mention Teng Li, even if I killed the entire Teng family, Teng Huayuan wouldn't say a word and wouldn't even dare to go find my parents. Power. Everything is centered around power. Only after becoming a powerful cultivator can one determine the life and death of a person. Wang Lin's heart was in pain as his eyes turned cold. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and his divine sense spread out inside the dream space. Shortly after, both of his hands formed a seal. Then he reached out and grabbed with his right hand. All the lights gathered and formed a door. This was a function that Situnan figured out after the heaven-defying bead completed its water element, using the surrounding light to form a formation that allowed Wang Lin free movement in and out of the dream space. Wang Lin stepped into the door. This place was still inside the heaven-defying bead space, but the surroundings looked different. Before Wang Lin, there was a giant over 30 feet tall that was floating in the air, sitting cross-legged. There were countless objects emitting light. Upon closer examination, the giant's figure was very plain, but there seemed to be yin energy gathering around him. His body was not solid, especially his chest, which had a giant hole and seemed to be ready to disappear at any time. There were waves of spiritual fluctuations around his body. At this point, the giant's eyes were closed, its body glowed, and completely ignored Wang Lin. Wang Lin stared at the giant. This wasn't his first time seeing Situ-Nan's nascent soul. Every time he saw it, he was shocked. He thought that if his nascent soul was so large, how large must be Situ-Nan's body? Hello, welcome back to my channel, Books with AR. Situ-Nan told him that during the soul transformation stage, the nascent soul transforms and becomes larger. However, the body doesn't grow at all, and the nascent soul was only this large when it's outside of the body. Wang Lin sat cross-legged on the ground, took out the gourd, took a big gulp, and began charging toward the mid-stage of foundation establishment. The reason he was doing this here was because Situ-Nan once told Wang Lin that doing this would help him recover. Time slowly passed, and in the blink of an eye, the deadline for the trial to enter the foreign battleground was almost here. A lot of cultivators had arrived outside the Jue Ming Valley months ago. They all found the best locations to watch the Jue Ming Valley's only exit. As more and more cultivators arrived, the area outside of the Jue Ming Valley became more and more lively. Of course, if anyone with Gringes met, they would start a big fight. Due to the foreign battleground opening every 100 years, the area within 1,000 kilometers of the Jue Ming Valley had been prepared with buildings. It has to be said that the opening of the foreign battleground gathers all of the top cultivators in Zhao. When the time for the foreign battleground to open is near, these buildings become the biggest marketplace in Zhao. All of the cultivators in Zhao meet here, making them very lively. Many materials and rare magic treasures appear here. On this day, countless cultivators gathered outside the Jue Ming Valley. There were cultivators from all of the numerous sects in Zhao. Aside from the very large sects who had their own area, everyone else was clumped in groups. The remaining people were from very small families, small sects, or independent cultivators. These small families, small sects, and independent cultivators didn't have the right to enter the foreign battleground. They showed up hoping to get something. Every time the foreign battleground opens, a large amount of spiritual energy leaks out. Absorbing just a bit of that spiritual energy would equal to weeks of cultivation. Seeing that the Jue Ming Valley was about to open, everyone found somewhere to wait for the opening. At noon on this day, the sky was blue and the sun was high in the sky. The temperature was slowly rising. It was extremely hot, but none of the cultivators outside minded, as their attention was focused on the exit of the Jue Ming Valley. Cultivators with experience all knew that the Jue Ming Valley would open exactly at noon. If one were to look from the sky at the Jue Ming Valley, they would find it shaped like a gourd. The mouth of the gourd was the only entrance. On each side of the entrance were two very tall mountains, and at the entrance was an octagon formation. The formation suddenly began to shine. Not far from the entrance, the nascent soul cultivators of the demonic sects gathered. Among them was Teng Huayuan's thin figure. His eyes were filled with excitement and killing intent as he stared at the formation at the entrance. The formation became brighter and brighter. Then 8 people slowly walked out. Teng Huayuan's eyes were filled with disappointment as his right hand took out a flag. He squeezed the flag, and one of the souls on it disappeared. Seeing the 8 people walking out, the cultivators of the Jue Ming sect started to point and talk. They came out! Look, they came out! Normally the first ones to come out are the ones that have lost their token. I wonder which sect that is. What is this? Why are there so many? Normally the first sect to come out has the least number of people. They came out. I see Xiao Yu. They're disciplines of the Piao Miao sect. The Piao Miao lost their token last time, and now they lost it again. It seems one of the largest of the Orthodox sects isn't that great. If my Fu Tian sect went, we probably would be stronger. Brother Jing, the strongest person in your sect is only at the early stage of core formation. The Piao Miao sect can send any ancestor and they will wipe out your sect. If you ask me, the Piao Miao failed because the disciplines of the demonic sects are too strong. Among the top 8 sects, aside from the Jie Mie sect, whose nascent soul cultivator had died, which made them lose the right to participate, all of the nascent soul ancestors of the remaining 7 were present. Currently, the Piao Miao sect head, Xin Hai, his face was dark, and he silently stared at the entrance. The 8 members of the Piao Miao sect walked out with strange expressions on their faces. Seeing all the people outside the valley and hearing their chatter, their faces turned red as they walked with their heads down towards Xin Hai. Xin Hai tried his best to contain his anger. He had spent a lot of resources for the right to enter the foreign battleground. He sent a total of 25 disciplines. 3 were at the late stage of Foundation establishment, 8 were at the mid stage, although the remaining disciplines were all at the early stage. He handed out a lot of magic treasures. He was dead set on qualifying this time, no matter what. But looking at it, now only 8 out of 25 survived. While Xin Hai was looking at the 8 disciplines, the ancestor of the Wan Tian sect, named Shang Guanyun, was nearby and laughed at him. He said, "Brother Xin, it's not that big of a deal to lose the battle to enter the foreign battleground. The cleanup of the foreign battleground is quite dangerous. Normally, only 1 out of 10 disciplines come out. Now you don't have to worry about your disciplines anymore. It's only 100 years until the next one." Xin Hai sneered and said, "Brother Shangguan, there is no need to be sarcastic here. Since I lost the bet, I won't back out on our agreement." With that, he looked at the 8 disciplines and gloomily asked, "Your eldest apprentice brother died?" One of them knelt on the ground and whispered, "They all died. All the other disciplines are dead." The remaining 7 all knelt on the ground. Their faces were filled with fear. Shang Guanyun, on the side, sneered in his heart, but on his face he showed mercy as he silently shook his head. Xin Hai's face sunk, and he said, "So many people died. Good. Which sect killed them?" The first disciple that knelt on the ground hesitated. Xin Hai waved his hand, and a barrier surrounded the Piao Miao disciplines. Shang Guanyun, who was on the side, raised his head and sneered in his heart. After blocking out other people's divine senses, Xin Hai motioned for the discipline to talk, and the discipline quickly spilled everything. After Xin Hai finished listening, he was startled, and his eyes turned cold. After a while, he coldly snorted and said, "You guys stay behind me. I have to see who he really is." With that, he waved his hand, and the barrier disappeared. Shang Guanyun, who was on the side, said, "Why isn't fellow cultivator Xu Mei here?"
Hello, welcome back to my channel, Books with AR. Xin Hai looked at Shang Guanyun and said, "Senior brother went to greet the messenger from Heaven's Tower. I believe he will be here soon." At that moment, the formation lit up again. Everyone outside the valley stopped their chatting and turned to watch. Teng Huayuan clenched his fists as he gloomily stared at the formation. He had already made his mind that the moment Wang Lin appears, he will use the curse to teleport next to him and make him suffer all the torture in the world. The formation shone brightly, and 13 people walked out. Teng Huayuan's face became even more gloomy as he pinched another soul in the flag. He sneered in his heart. "Wang Lin, if you're really cold-hearted enough to not care about your family and don't come out, then I'll admit that I underestimated you. But even if you manage to get away, once I reach the mid-stage of nascent soul, I can increase the power of the curse to find you." The cultivators outside of the valley began to talk again. "The qualification battle this time is too strange. Before, the first to come out always had the most people, and then the number of people decreases from there. Why is it that the second group has more than the first group? Strange. I have a feeling that the matter this time is very strange. What sect is it this time? If any of you know, speak quickly." "It's the He Huan sect. I know that slut. Wang Ying. As long as she appears within 100 feet of me, I can smell her stench." "That is correct. That is the He Huan sect." As people talked, the faces of the 2 nascent soul cultivators of the He Huan sect, Cheng Huan and Chen Yen, darkened as they sighed with each other. Then their expressions returned to normal. The disciples of the He Huan sect gloomily rushed toward Cheng Huan and Chen Yen with complex expressions on their faces. The leading female disciple quickly threw a voice transmission jade to the 2 nascent soul cultivators when they arrived. Chen Yuan frowned. He placed the jade on his forehead and was startled, then quickly looked at Wang Ying and asked, "Is this true?" Wang Ying respectfully said, "Ancestor, we saw it with our own eyes." The disciples behind her all seemed to already know the contents of the jade, and all quickly nodded. Chen Yen looked at everyone, then took the jade from Chen Yuan. After scanning the jade for a long time, she let out a cold laugh and crushed it into dust.
Suddenly, a pair of eyes from one of the orthodox sects looked at them, and Cheng Huan and Chen Yen immediately turned and saw Xin Hai nodding at them. Cheng Huan and Chen Yen noticed Xin Hai's reaction when the Piao Mao sect disciples came out, but couldn't guess why. However, after seeing the jade, they realized what happened. Teng Huayuan frowned as he looked at Cheng Huan, Chen Yen, and Xin Hai. He suddenly felt that something big was going to happen, but he didn't know what the problem could be. After speculating for a bit, he couldn't figure out what was wrong, so he let out a cold snort and destroyed another soul in the flag. At that moment, not only Teng Huayuan, but all the other sects realized that something was wrong. They didn't know what the disciples could have said to make the faces of 3 nascent soul cultivators become so dark. Even the small families, small sects, and independent cultivators noticed that something was wrong, so they all gathered together and started talking. Just at that moment, the sky suddenly darkened, and a circle of light silently appeared. The circle of light floated to the middle of the sky, then expanded to 10 meters in radius, and 4 people walked out. The person in the front was fat like a ball, with a smile on his face, but the moment he appeared, all the nascent soul cultivators flew into the air and respectfully stood at his side. This person was the messenger that was left at Zhao, Lin Yi. Lin Yi let out a laugh and said, "Everyone, I'm here to help the messengers of the higher cultivation countries open the gate to the foreign battleground. I won't mess with your right to enter, so please be assured." The 3 people behind Lin Yi were Pu Nanzi, the bite-haired cultivator from the Piao Mao sect, and the skinny cultivator from the Tendal sect. These 3 accompanied Lin Yi and landed in the middle of the clearing. All the other nascent soul cultivators quickly followed and stood at their sides. Xin Hai took the chance to stand next to the white-haired old man and sent over some voice transmissions. This white-haired old man was the Piao Mao sect's #1 expert, Zhu Mei. After he heard Xin Hai's message, he calmly nodded. The formation lit up again, and 5 people walked out. The moment those 5 appeared, a wave of cold energy spread out. The 5's eyes were bloodshot. They looked around and found a corner to sit in. What sect are they from? Everyone immediately started talking again. After a long time, no one could figure it out, so everyone started guessing what sect these 5 were from. Zhu Mei, who was standing beside Lin Yi, suddenly laughed and said, "Lord Messenger, look at these disciples of the corpse sect, filled with hostility. I heard that the corpse sect has a secret technique that allows their disciples to fuse with their corpse puppets. I guess those 5 are these so-called human puppets." Lin Yi nodded and said, "Those 5 are indeed human puppets." The skinny man from the Tenda sect looked around and frowned as he said, "Why isn't fellow cultivator Yi here?" Lin Yi shook his head and said, "The corpse sect didn't follow the rules of keeping the token within the Jue Ming Valley, so they are disqualified. Even if he doesn't come, it doesn't matter." With that, he casually looked at the crowd in the northwest and secretly thought, "The corpse sect. This time, several more will finish the possession and recover their cultivation." Thinking about that, Lin Yi suddenly turned towards the Wu Feng Valley's nascent soul cultivator and said, "Wu Feng Valley also didn't keep their token and is disqualified, but they gave their token to another sect, so that sect is allowed to have 2 tokens because there is no limit on the amount of tokens you can have." The nascent soul cultivator of Wu Feng Valley was an old man in black. His expression didn't change as he looked at Teng Huayuan. Teng Huayuan also was silent. Even though he was a guest elder, he still paid a huge price to get the token. The formation lit up again. Suddenly, Teng Huayuan's heart pounded as he felt the curse. He stared at the formation, waiting for Wang Lin to appear. The moment Wang Lin appears, he will immediately teleport out.